Thank you once again for joining me. This is Michael Williams, and we are looking at the second key to how to stop stuttering. The second key to how to stop stuttering. The second key is this. To speak well, you have to speak more. To speak well, you have to speak more. Remember, we talked about in the first key, thinking differently and understanding that speaking well, speaking fluently, speaking smoothly, speaking confidently is a learnable skill, right? It's something that you can learn. So how do we learn anything? Well, first, we learn the proper way to do whatever that skill is, right? Whatever the proper way is. Now, you can learn things the wrong way, and then if you learn it the wrong way, you're going to practice it or do it the wrong way, right? So you learn the proper way to speak well, and then what? Then you practice it over and over until it becomes natural or second nature. To speak well, you have to speak more. What that says is that you learn how to speak well and then you practice it. You learn how to speak well and then you practice. So how do you learn how to speak well? Well, there are lots of different ways. One, you can model people, right? You look at someone else who speaks well and you model them, you emulate them, you pattern yourself after them. Okay, and then you do what? Then you practice that. You model, you learn, you practice. You take a speech class and you practice breathing and you practice how to use your hands appropriately. You don't want to use your hands like this, right? So you practice. Some people don't like the way that I use my hands, but that's the way I speak. That helps me speak well. So you practice speaking well. Now sometimes, well, how can I practice speaking well if I stutter? Aha, great question. Let me ask you a question. Do you stutter 100% of the time? Do you stutter 100% of the time? The vast majority of people will say no. Do you stutter 100% of the time when you're by yourself? Well, vast majority say no. Like if you're reading or if you're rehearsing something, sure, sometimes you may stutter. But the vast majority of the time you don't stutter when you're by yourself. So when should you practice or rehearse, right? So you're learning how to speak well by watching someone else, or by taking speech therapy, or whatever it is that you want to do, right, to learn. Then when do you practice? When do you rehearse? You practice and you rehearse when you're by yourself, because that's when you have the lowest percentage of chance or time that you're going to stutter. So by practicing and rehearsing when you're by yourself, what you're doing, now watch this, I don't want you to miss this. What you're doing is you're developing new neurological connections in your brain. That is, learning has a physical manifestation in our brain. So it's not just something that's mental or psychological, while it is, but it's also physical. So the seat of our thoughts and of our mental activity is in our brain, which is a physical organ. And we can see in the brain neurological connections where the neurons connect, okay? And the stronger and the greater those connections, the greater it is that we're going to continue that pattern or that activity. So the more you practice speaking well, initially by yourself, the more and the greater and the stronger those connections in the speaking centers of your brain. Does that make sense? So it's not really about, oh, can I do this, or is this something that's hereditary, or is this genetic? Maybe it is genetic, maybe it is hereditary. Doesn't matter. You can still develop and strengthen the neurons that are needed to help you speak well. Okay? Unless a person has brain damage in that area that controls their speaking, they can develop these connections. Even if a person has brain damage, this has been shown that other parts of the brain can come in and take over, right? So it can be kind of rerouted to other areas of our brain that can help us speak well, okay? So very important that we understand the second key is that to speak well, we have to speak more, and it's really about practicing, right? It's about modeling and learning the correct way to speak, and then practicing that way. And this practice develops these neurological connections, right, which then can become more long-term and permanent. You do have the ability, the capacity to learn the skill of speaking well, but you have to learn the correct way to speak, and then you have to practice and rehearse it. For how long? Some people may take them months. If a person's been stuttering for years, it's probably going to take them years to recover. And we're going to talk about that in the third key. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. This is Michael Williams. I'll see you in the next key.